for her.
Jim Clay jumped onto Kirchhoff.
Okay, thanks, right. Yep, appreciate it. All trying to watch too many things here. So we could go to the agenda. I believe you have it on the next slide. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda or anything you'd like to add to the agenda? Joe, go ahead.
Watkins, so moved.
Joe Irvin will second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposed. The motion passes unanimously. If everybody had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting, entertain a motion to adopt those.
Nancy Watkins, so moved.
Yana, second.
Okay, stand by 1 second. I'm getting an email from Melissa trying to get into the meeting, so I'll have her try to log back in real quick. All right, so it's been moved and seconded to adopt the minutes from the last meeting. All those in favor? Aye. Good. Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. Motion passes unanimously. All right, so I wonder if you'll watch to see if Melissa tries to get in and allow her. We'll see what happens. I just sent her an email. So we got the draft out to you. We realized late on Monday. Poor Nancy had was ill, so she worked very diligently to get that done with us assisting her over last weekend. So we know we got it out late, but we'd still like to take time to go over it. Hopefully the majority of you had time to at least get through it. I know it is a very long document, and for me, I've had to read it more than one time to continue to wrap my head around everything. So let's do the best we can to go through it. As we get through that, let's take those comments and discussion. Maybe as a group, we can decide to extend the timeline a little bit to get comments back, but we can work with that group that's doing the editing and the writing to see what our real true dead dates are, even if it's one day, one way or the other would be helpful. So everybody gets the opportunity to comment on the document. So with that, I will open it up to the group for discussion. And if you raise your hand, I will call on you. You need the link again? No? Okay. Yeah, okay, stand by.
I had it and then I lost it. Who did it come from?
It came from Kara Garrett.
I just put it in. See if that works.
Well, I'll start off if nobody has anything. I think from the group that did all the work putting this together, I think it really followed the framework that we discussed. I think all those items got covered that the work group put together as a template as we went through that. For me, there's just some little minor things that I see, but I haven't had a chance to make comments on the whole document yet myself. But if anybody else would like to start, Nancy or Dave or anybody on the writing committee, thoughts, or anybody from the group.
I guess this is Nancy. Just really wanted to thank Dave and Jim and our reviewers who gave us good feedback. For those of y'all that are like a little daunted about a 58-page report, you might want to just focus on the executive summary, which is what 95% of people will only read. And that one's only, I think, like 3 pages long, maybe 3.5. And then the barriers and recommendations at the end are also important. Oh, and make sure on page 5, make sure we got your name spelled right and your what organization you're with, because I had to do a little bit of research to figure that out. So if you didn't do anything else, I think it would be a good idea just to hit those 3 things. And then a lot of the stuff in the middle it's just drawn from different sources, and a lot of it's quoting, information that's publicly available. So, certainly everyone is completely welcome to read all of it, but if you find that to be kind of too much, I would start with the executive summary and then go straight to the end.
Nancy, this is Joe Irvin. Question, the first barrier where it talks about recommendation. I think the way I'm reading this is the recommendation is basically saying we need to continue to support and fund data collection and scientific research.
That's right.
Just to gain this better understanding of what really is risk, is how I'm reading that. Or I guess standards. That's related to standards. That's the first one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right, Joe. And it's we can certainly tighten up wording if things are unclear or not the will of the group. But I think just in general, we realize that when you get out of the forest and into the community, there's not really a consensus of how exactly is the best way to mitigate the risk. And so we're recognizing, I mean, not all this is something that a model can do by itself. We're trying to be kind of holistic in our recommendations and just say, let's try to get together and be more specific instead of having a one size fits all. Everybody has to have the wildfire prepared home, and if they don't, we don't have any other recommendations. Like this is to go beyond that and to make more specific recommendations and have them supported by science and consistently agreed to with a reflection of what the local conditions might be, which might change the recommendation from community to community, but then within a community, try to make those recommendations consistent. And Dave and Jim, if y'all have anything to add to that.
That makes good sense to me. But if they have more, I'll listen, obviously. But just also overall, I read the whole report and I think it's really well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the group as well did a fantastic job. Just while you're reading through it or thinking, I'd also like to introduce to the group, I know that Richard Breckbuell was my assistant chief from our department for the risk modeling work group, and he promoted into a different position, still working within our program. But the beginning of last month, after our meeting, we hired Chris Ramey to be our risk modeling assistant chief now. And Chris, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself to the group if you would take a second to do that.
Hi, everyone. My apologies, I'm traveling today, but I did have a chance to go through this report, and it's very comprehensive. I'm just kind of starting to wrap my head around all the work that you guys have been doing. And I'm coming from, the Humboldt Del Norte unit and landing smack dab in the middle of Sacramento in a whole new stratosphere. So I'm doing my best to play catch up, and coming in at a time when this report is in draft form and just released is really helpful to just start to learn and begin to see what the challenges we're facing. So thank you. I look forward to speaking with any of you. Feel free to reach out.
Hey, Yana?
Oh,
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to say that I've worked with Chris for years, and I'm thrilled for you all, Jim. He's a fantastic person, and will have a lot to contribute to your program and to our efforts here. So sad to see him leave the Humboldt Del Norte unit, but happy to know he's with you all.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thanks,
well, we
Yana.
can get that talent across the state to improve everything statewide, hopefully. So are always looking for folks that can do that. And Chris and I talked about this report this morning. Again, he's not been heavily involved in risk modeling. And just out of our discussions, he said, well, I had to read it a couple times. And I kind of pointed to kind of what Nancy brought up about, the executive summary and then those the barriers at the end. And I think Chris was able to take a lot away from it. But one thing he did mention, which we all know this from being on this group, is there's a lot of science behind this. Risk modeling isn't just something that is a fancy word, and so I think that's an important takeaway from my perspective. Is this is going to the legislature, and it's not something that is a short answer. And I think the science that's discussed in here and the methodologies and the things that are talked about really are going to make those folks or help those folks understand this is a complicated issue. It's not something that is just one thing. There's many pieces to it, whether it's the data collection, the mitigation backflow, what's been done into open data sources so modelers can use it, and the types of models that can be used. I think it really highlights that. And while you don't want it to be so hard for somebody to read that doesn't know anything about it, but it is a very challenging topic that does need to be, I think, fleshed out this deep for them to even get a beginning understanding of the issues that we've been working on as a group over the last 8-9 months. So. Kind of nice to have a set of eyes that's never seen this before look at it.
Yeah, and I can say that there's elements of it that my eyes were drawn immediately to the data element. This is really centered around data from what I could tell, and the ability to access it, compile it, store it, and analyze it. And it seems like the data that we've got it from the past is not comprehensive, and it's kind of hit and miss. And so I did get some of that out of this.
So what's best for folks? Do we want to take some more time to get through it all and put the comments in there? and then talk about it again next week? Or do people have more they want to add? I want to give everybody an opportunity to do whatever, but you know, if there's not a lot of feedback now, and people want to continue to read through it and add comments to it. Oh, there's Max. I'm trying to con people into talking, so I'm working on it. So,
Good job.
Max,
Well,
go ahead.
I have to admit, it just came in a couple days ago, and I've had a busy
Understood.
week, and I'd really like to read it more deeply. And I thought I saw in the email that you wanted comments and edits by Friday. And if
Yeah,
that's the case, I think I would probably go that route personally, because I haven't read it deeply enough yet.
Nancy, does that works for you and your team still to get try to get all the comments back by Friday, and then really we'll be going over those final comments next week on the 31st.
Sure. I mean,
So we should send those to Nancy, or who should we actually send those?
I think the best thing to keep everyone's version control craziness under a threshold is just to make edits in the doc. The Google Docs can keep up with who's done what. You can see that Jim has already done some, and I put in a couple of notes. Yana, I had a copy of something that you put out that I printed out, and I had to scan it and put it in because I couldn't find the file. So it was a little image that you made back in the fall. So if you don't mind, if you just email it to me, I'll stick it in the doc and make it a nicer version of it than the scan that I put in. But yeah, if y'all would just whatever you want to do or say, keeping it in the doc would help a lot.
Yeah, we do have the doc set up where you can only do suggestions. That way you can't just do straight line edit. So, you can highlight a word or a sentence and put a suggestion there is how it's set up to work. Thank you, Max. Yana?
Yeah.
So Nancy, happy to send you that document. Also happy to edit it more and nerd out a little bit and flesh it out. It was just a conceptual diagram to try and coordinate some of our thinking here. I think the bigger question I have in the way it's constructed, it feels a little bit like, here's what we think we know about these types of models, and here's where some of the barriers are. But I don't quite feel the so what factor of, well, what do we want? What do we recommend? Who would we want to be holding on to this kind of data, compiling it, concatenating it? Is there an actual recommendation that it lands somewhere, or is that too far advanced for our team to really be able to digest to that level?
You're talking specifically about the data commons recommendation. Mm-hmm. And I would say yes. If you look, what we just said is there are so many questions that have to be worked out, and one of them is ownership control. I mean, it's a big one, but I don't think that this group has the time or frankly the authority to figure all that out on our own. Just to say that we like the idea, and if it gets done right, it could really make a big difference. But there's certainly devils in the details, and we can use the word devil if you really want to.
I think both the conclusion and the executive summary could say that more clearly. This is a complicated beast. We understand that we're going to describe some of the issues. It's beyond our capacity to say exactly where it should go, but here are maybe some of the elements of a data commons that would be critical in terms of it has to be refreshed, it has to be publicly accessible, or whatever that list might be. I think it would help. If I was a policymaker reviewing this, I think it would still feel a little bit vague as to, here's a lot of information, but I still don't know what to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah, Yana, to your point, it was interesting yesterday. We were talking internally about next steps. And so, I don't, obviously all of you were asked to participate for a year, which was a large commitment. But maybe, maybe not today, but something to think about. are there some of these items, to your point, Yana, that we identify and we make a recommendation that this group should continue to possibly work on some of these things in more specific detail because they are a challenge, right? And I don't know if that's a will of the WMAC to decide, or maybe it's just a will of this group that thinks it's so important to continue working together collaboratively to do that. I don't quite know that next step, but it could be mentioned in here though that a group like this may need to further review and dig into some of these more detailed items to try to flesh that out.
I just think maybe being a little bit more specific around there's more work to be done in this space, calling that out, I think, a little more directly. And, here's a solid foundation from which a next group could pick that up, or just, being a little bit more clear about how a policymaker might review that information and kind of get the status of what we're truly suggesting here.
Sounds good. Robert, I see your hand up.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry I was a little bit late. I was on an airplane and I'm not anymore, so that's good. I think a lot of that discussion actually goes to something we talked about the last meeting, which is the kind of the target audience piece, and making sure that we, and I'm not sure that we do still, or ever did have a clear idea about who the target audience is for this document. And so, and I don't know, I honestly don't know how to solve that issue. Obviously the policymakers are one of the major audiences, but I think if we're going to have discussions about, which things do we continue, and I think there are a lot of things in here that are worth continuing, but I think it needs to have a clearer idea about the target audience for who that goes to, and who is it that we're trying to help with those particular kind of sub issues, if you will. So just a thought.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a little challenging when they tell you it goes to the legislature and post it on your website, right? Chris,
Yes,
I see your hands up.
exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of unrelated to discussion right now, but I was wondering what build mitigation visibility into catastrophe models means. What is mitigation visibility?
I can take that. The catastrophe modelers, by and large, don't know exactly what mitigation actions have been taken at the parcel level. They may know some of them, but they typically don't know all of them. And then when it comes to other larger things like prescribed burns or fuel breaks, they typically would not have visibility into that as well. So if enough work has been done to change the condition and make it less risky, you'd want the models to be able to see that as soon as the work can be verified, and the data has to be captured in a way that's regularly consumed by insurers and modelers. Otherwise, it's just anecdotal and they won't be able to use it as part of their normal way of doing business. Does that make sense?
That does. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's actually the whole rationale for the data commons that Yana was asking about, which, certainly lots of details would have to be worked out. But the point is there's a lot of confusion. Not only do modelers not see it, but people don't know that the modelers don't see it, and they don't understand why. They did something good should happen to them because they did something. And so there's a disruption in what intuitively should be the outcome of reducing your risk, if you actually did reduce your risk. And so this is to get at not only will the modelers see it, but do people know what the modelers are looking at? So thinking about if if you get a quote for a mortgage loan and they say, well, your credit score is 450, you might not know why they scored you, how they calculate 450, but you know it's bad. And then you can get a copy of your credit report and you can see what the vendor's looking at. They'll know bankruptcies, they'll know, open lines of credit, late payments, those sorts of things. And so those are the things that you can cure and verify and have visibility into, even if different scoring vendors would calculate scores differently, and different mortgage lenders or insurance companies would do things different with credit.
Hey Nancy, this is Michael McGuire here at OPR. Just a quick question. Just looking through the report here, and let's say, starting with the table of contents, will there be in the final draft like links if you were to click on, let's say, section 1 or any components of section 1, like components of wildfire risk, likelihood, intensity, where you could actually click on the header itself, and then it would navigate directly to that page and section, and vice versa?
Nancy, you're muted.
Sorry, I said that was a spiffy idea, and so far our formatting has been very rudimentary. I actually don't know who's in charge of formatting at the end of the day. I'm hoping it's somebody from CAL FIRE, but I love the idea. It would be, if it's PDF, you can put that in bookmarks. If this is a different kind of document, you could put hot links in.
Copy that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. And by the way, there is a comment in the chat: seeing by modelers supported if they have recent 4-meter imagery over treatment areas. My understanding, and this is where Chief Winokur has better information than I do, that any kind of flyover imagery has the potential of missing what's going on underneath the vegetation that's being flown over. And so a lot of the key things, like what's exactly going on in zone 0 or under the eaves, is not visible. I mean, that being said, with the data commons, we are trying to not reinvent the wheel, but to put in there things that are very what they call unobtainium, without a site visit.
I think just one other thing, Nancy, to build on Nancy's point, not only the zone 0 and some of the building characteristics aligning with the Safer from Wildfires framework that just aren't visible from the air, but also shaded fuel breaks are generally very, if not difficult, if not impossible to detect from the air, because we're deliberately leaving the canopy intact to retard future understory growth. And so having a mechanism by which a community can report their progress is, I think, exactly to Nancy's point about the credit report. If we've done work, we ought to be able to tell people about it and get credit for it, and understand that what we've reported has largely matched with with that. And Mark, to your point, I agree. We know where the fuel breaks went in, but the modelers don't know where we put them in. And so having folks hunt around and seek out the Easter egg or the needle in the haystack to figure out where we work seems like we're leaving some opportunities on the table to report the work we have done, to ensure that we all have an accurate and recently updated understanding of the landscape, so that the models more accurately reflect the reality on the ground.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Sorry, somebody was trying to get on the meeting from the public and sent me an email, so I was trying to help them out. So.
I think just to add to Mark's point, and it's really important that that these questions are coming up, because if they're not clear from reading the report, then they need to be made more clear. The people who do the work know that they did the work. They don't have a great mechanism to record it in a permanent location that is accessed and used by insurers and catastrophe modelers. And so if there's some people who report and some that don't report, it's as though no one does, because the modelers are not going to only take in information. Well, this isn't like in the riskiest areas, you need consistent information, because you can't, it's not good to compare something where you know a lot versus something where you're blind. You can't really make an apples to apples comparison. So that's the part of the problem with insurance and modeling, is that it has to operate as a process or a system, and the system has to be long-term, reliable. It can't be just, like Dave said, an Easter egg hunt every time you want to find out about a risk. So they're also, if the modelers know that they're going to always have this information, they will do more to try to understand before and after a fire how much of a difference it made, and then model before and after a fire how much of a difference will it make. But right now, more of that information is anecdotal and less is systematically captured.
Mm-hmm. And Mark, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Jim and Nancy and everyone else. Mark Rosenberg, CAL FIRE. Just wanted to make the point that the Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force is making an effort to collect and distribute and make available through viewers and online for self-service our treatment activities. And so we've been actively gathering that information, and that's why I mention it. I know it's not the silver bullet. It may not get everyone's if it wasn't government funded, it might not show up. So I understand and I appreciate that explanation. I just wanted to make sure I was letting you know. I think most of you probably do know that we are trying to make that available so that people can use it and take it into account when you're considering your risk.
Yeah, so think about if we built a bridge from the other side, where insurers and catastrophe models are standing there with their hands open going, we want your data, we want your data, give it, where's our this quarter's refresh, and not just what CAL FIRE's doing, but what's going on in Oregon, what's going on in Colorado, because these are countrywide models, or at least they're models for the West. So it's a lot more useful to them if we're building a process that can be fed, and it's going to take a while. Not everybody's going to be as far along as CAL FIRE, but the other states are looking to y'all as leaders, and they have problems too. And so if you help them figure out how to solve it, and maybe get through some of the heavy stuff first with the insurance industry, then the collective effort will be more consistent and everyone will benefit. So I would love to see that data that you are collecting be commented on by modelers, and have them say, well, if only we got it in this format instead of that format, and then we would use it all the time. Or, well, we just need this extra level of granularity that you have, but you just aren't publishing it. Those are the kinds of things those are the details where the devil is.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't speak for Oregon, but I do think we are building a process that will be repeated throughout the year on a regular basis as a part of our accountability and transparency.
Thank you, Mark. Esteban?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you. I wanted to ask, because I'm missing it, but in any of the recommendations, is there talk of creating or recommending that in terms of mitigation data collection, that data be publicly available for inspection? I'm sorry, I don't see it, and maybe I'm missing it.
I can take a stab at this. I think, Esteban, that publicly available sort of. If you do something for your home, you should be able to see that. And so as a member of the public, you should see your own data. And I think it should be for free. If I do something to my home, I should be able to see that. But I shouldn't be able to see the granular data for your home and vice versa. So that's where the public part of it stops. And then when you think about, say, we're in the same neighborhood, it's going to be important to understand our contribution to the risk of our neighborhood. So we're thinking maybe we'll have to be able to protect the PII of the individual homeowners, but also allow the aggregation of parcel level risk into meaningful chunks, I guess, for multiple parcels aggregated together. So definitely the issue of access has to be worked out. The issue of what is a meaningful aggregation of what Esteban did and what Nancy did and, what Yana did. How do we aggregate that all up together and make it something where each one of us don't know exactly what everybody else did, but we do know that collectively in our neighborhood, this is the current state of mitigation. And maybe it needs to be better than it is because we're not as good of a risk as we should be. Does that answer the question?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think you're right in that there's a couple of balancing acts there. I guess my question is a little bit also, when you have building codes, right? You kind of have an idea that every building in a certain zone meets all those requirements. So even though you do not necessarily have to get a report address by address to confirm that, you have a building code and you have enforcement and compliance, and then I guess you have a presumption that every single home within that area has all of those qualities. So my question is, can we not build a similar type of situation for this wildfire mitigation, especially when you have community level types of designations, where if in fact you're having a designation being placed over an area, can't you presume that all of those things kind of have to have been checked off in a checklist, and whether that cannot be part of the aggregate that you are mentioning, that it's very important for the public transparency process.
Yeah, I think Dave, you put something in chat. You had a comment?
Yeah, I would just point out that the building code, that's only applies for new construction. If there is a new community built in a fire hazard severity zone that requires 7A construction, yes, we can presume that the building elements are all compliant with the current code. But if it's a established mature community, then there are no elements of new building codes that are applied retroactively to existing structures. They all become existing non-conforming. And so we need a parcel by parcel ability to understand which parcels have been retrofitted for the building portion. And then for the associated home ignition zone and defensible space inspections, obviously those I would push back strenuously with the idea that we can make the assumption that our vegetation management and defensible space codes were being enforced as a blanket statement over any particular area without ground-based verification.
Robert, do you have something you'd like to add to that? I see your hands up.
Yeah, very similar, although a couple of bits of clarification. Almost all of the buildings are going to conform to some building code. The way the building code works is it only applies when you're actually constructing it. Once it's constructed, it's deemed to be code compliant. So it isn't even really that it's an existing non-conforming. The one that you might be able to do, but it would require a survey, is doing a pre-survey as to whether or not a given structure is 7A compliant or not, and if it ever was 7A compliant. because 7A also adjusts pretty much every 3 years. We adjust that code. So, and that's true of all the codes. So every 3 years, the code changes, new requirements are put in, occasionally, not very often, but occasionally requirements come out. But you can't blanket unless the community was all built at the exact same time, like you have a tract of homes. They are not all going to comply to the same level of building code. So it isn't even really an existing non-conforming thing. It's this is the code it was built under. This building next door to it was built under a different code, so has different requirements. So.
Yeah. Again, all those data challenges we continue to talk about, right? Esteban, do you have any more on that since you brought it up, or thoughts?
I mean, I think this is just in terms of going forward. I think there is an increase in the amount of community interest in community-wide designations. So I think, again, we are here to make recommendations. I think it is very rational or reasonable for this group to recommend to leverage new designations. I mean, if you have a community, I mean, I understand that, like if there's an interplay here between building codes and community and wildfire community level mitigation efforts here. They're not completely synchronous. They kind of overlap to some extent. But I think there is an opportunity to leverage if new communities are getting designated, either with IBHS's prepared home or any of those other standards. I think that information can be leveraged and should be leveraged by the models, as opposed to just say that the only data that's going to be accounted is something that's 100% verified through a ground surveillance of one thing or the other. There has to be room for that, and we ourselves don't have to decide that. I think a recommendation for that would be sufficient, and that's my final comment in terms of this.
Oh, I guess I'd say I definitely don't disagree with you there. We're looking at trying to establish a source of data that's really hard to get and not available at any at scale. We would never, I would never advocate for models only using this data and not using other data that's available to them. And so if the way that the report reads makes it imply that that's the recommendation, then we definitely want to fix that, because there's this problem is really hard to model, and the models are going to change. The science is going to change, and the data available to them, different modelers are going to want to use different data and have their own special take on things, and insurance companies will too. That's always better in terms of evolution than trying to mandate this is how, like some sort of formulaic approach to a complex problem that has never actually been solved very well yet. So this is really supposed to feed better community designations, because right now we understand how to classify communities with respect to hazard, but the hazard doesn't really take into account what they've done to bring down the risk. So we're trying to say, okay, you're in a very high hazard area, but you brought your risk down 3 levels, whatever that means. And the levels have to be determined, and the context has to be worked out, and how you get from one level to another has to be determined. But it definitely starts with consistent data collection. That's a big part of it. Does that help at all to address your very important concerns?
I think it does. Again, I think it's just a matter of kind of, having that recommendation in there to kind of clarify that they should be looking at those types of designations as a source of data to help with their modeling.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think we can find somewhere, Nancy, in those barriers to put that. There's several places in there, I think, anyway. Dave, do you have your?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. Good discussion. Anybody else? Okay, is everybody good with discussion? Have any more discussion? I don't want to have everybody just sit here and stare at the screen, so want to keep folks moving and productive. So anyone else? Jan?
I guess one last thought for those that had the biggest hand in writing this, is there anything that you feel needs special attention or you feel like you struggled with? I know that when I write something, I often have like, I still don't feel like I got this quite right. Is there any place you'd like us to drill into? Perfect. Awesome.
Okay. All right, so just kind of to wrap this up again, everybody use the Google Doc and get your comments in that document by Friday so we can get through those for the meeting we have on the 31st, knowing it's a tight timeline to keep moving along so we get this document posted on the agenda for the WMAC meeting. That again needs to be, we'll have to get that posted up on the 9th for them to take a look at that. You your hand's still up? I didn't know.
So for the 31st, is our goal to approve it out of this committee? Is that what the desired goal is, or is that our last crack at it?
No, it won't be our last crack at it. Our last crack at the document will be after the WMAC meeting, but obviously we wouldn't want to adjust too much. So the WMAC will get a chance to look at it and read through it and maybe provide some comments or suggestions, not necessarily they're not approving the document, but they're giving us feedback. So yes, we would have a little bit more time. And then any of those final comments would be the 20th through the 22nd, and then this group's final approval on the 28th. That help you?
Yes.
Okay. But obviously, as tight as these timelines are, as quick as we can get everybody's comments, and then people will make comments, and we might make some changes. We'll have some more comments. So we want to make sure we have time to get through that and get everybody's input on the document. Anyone else?
Can you put that timeline up one more time? I just want to make sure I have it in my calendar right.
Okay, got it, Jan? Anybody else need a little bit of time to get those jotted down if they didn't have them? Okay.
Yeah, if you could just I'm just trying to do a screenshot. Just give me 1 second. Sorry.
Absolutely.
And these were emailed out from Kara Garrett.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just look for it there then.
Okay, and I did get down just to kind of follow up. So there was a mention of making sure there was links to some of those documents. Is that? And I know Nancy said something we might have to work on once it's completed, or
We've got some formatting things like our footnotes are kind of sloppy. We need to standardize those. We could put in links to those documents, but I think Michael's suggestion was navigation within the document. Like if you click on the table of contents and it
Oh,
jumps
I got
to
you.
page 20, so you don't have to go scrolling through.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
I think we can have a little off to the side chat about formatting once the WMAC has got their I don't know, but whenever you want to do it, we can talk about how to format it to make it as user friendly as possible.
Yeah, Mike, I think we ought to kind of wait towards the end there and then do it. I think we have some folks I know how to do those kinds of things. So create
Yes.
those tables correctly and reference things. I've tried it before and I've made a total disaster out of it. Had to scream for help. So it is very challenging. So, but I'm sure we have some folks that can work on that. Okay, if there's no more, oh, Michael, I see your hand up.
Yep, thanks, guys. Just want to confirm that I heard it correctly. You guys want comments due by COB Friday on the report. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, just want to make sure of that. Thank you.
Yeah, please, I did mention, make sure that we got your name right. I also listed some people that weren't on the committee, including Michael McGuire, who did a bunch of work to put this report together. And so if y'all would take a look at that on page 6 too, please, and see if there's anyone else, especially Michael from OPR. I know you had a lot of folks in your shop working, and I think CDI might have had others come on in addition to Deborah Halberstadt. So I just am not sure we've captured all the contributors.
Yep, thank you, Nancy. I'll make sure to provide those names as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Yep, want to make sure we get folks recognized. Absolutely. It's a monumental challenge. Okay, if no more comments there, we can open it up for roundtable. If anybody has anything, anybody from the group? Again, my only thing for roundtable is we have these meetings. If you know, as I mentioned before, what this group thinks about, wanting to continue to work on some things, staying together, working on those items, or if this long commitment was enough for you, understandable totally. And maybe it's a smaller group, but I just would like your all's input. I know we're all passionate about getting this done and we think these things are really, really important. Again, I don't know if they would let us, but if we maybe had an idea what we would ask for as a group, if we could continue to work on things, if that was the will of the group. So just something for y'all to think about over the next couple months, before they go, oh, you're done with your report. Thank you very much. Go away. So I'd like to be able to come back and say, no, the group would like to keep together and working on something if that is what the group would like to do. So that's all I have for roundtable, if anybody has anything else. So. Okay, I don't believe, but I'll ask, is there any public comment? Not seeing anything pop up unless you are, Melinda.
No,
Okay.
I'm not seeing any, Chief.
Thank you very much. Oh, Esteban?
Sorry, quickly, what section did you mention for the contributors?
Page 6.
Okay, thank you. I'll look for it.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned, our next meeting is on next Wednesday at 1 o'clock. So you get those comments in by Friday. It'll be another busy weekend, Monday, Tuesday of getting that stuff all pulled together. So thanks for the team that's working on the document constantly. Appreciate all the effort. And again, I think a few comments today and get the comments from folks online, but an excellent job. And thank you to those folks. And there's been many of you working on it and contributing. And I do want to, my gratitude for sure. So thank you all very much. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Nancy Watkins, so moved.
A
Robert
second?
Marshall, second.
Thank you, Robert. Been
Second.
moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor, aye?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Sounds good.
All
Aye.
right. Good. Any opposed? All right. Well, thank you all for your time today getting on and your review and your constant review to make this something for us all to really put forward and be proud of and provide an awesome report for this work group. So thank you much. We will see you next Wednesday. We look forward to everybody's comments. Appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, everyone.
Patty.
Thank you.